In today's tutorial, we're going to be covering the Nvidia control panel settings as well as the in-game settings for the division. We're going to be doing it today though in three parts, alright, because the last time some people had some problems with the higher graphics, so I'm going to do it in three sections. I'm going to do one, the first section, which is going to be for high-end PCs with a 980 Ti and above. This would be for 2560 by 1440p, 1080p, as well as 4K. Alright, this is the very maximum graphic fidelity that I can find for the game, and that's the settings that I'm about to show you next. After those, we'll move on to the second part, which will be for mid-range PCs that might be slightly outdated or have a slightly older graphics card and you want to try to get a little more out of it. And the third part of this tutorial gonna be for computers that you know you shouldn't be trying to play it on. Alright, so this is gonna be like the most minimal settings you could get. Alright, so if you want to try to run it on that old laptop or that old desktop, the last part of the settings, as long as you have an Nvidia GPU with access to the Nvidia control panel, I'm gonna show you a way you'll be able to run it, but it's probably gonna look terrible. Alright, so we're gonna start with the first part of the tutorial, which will be for the high-end PCs coming up next. Alright. Okay, so now we're gonna move on with the first part of the tutorial, which is for the high-end build with the 980 Ti's and above. I just want to say first of all, with the anisotropic filtering at 16x, this is completely optional. I do believe that it make the game look better, but I can see that it do introduce some problems. But you might want to test it out and see if you like the way that the game look, and plus if you run it more than a 1080 a 980 Ti, you know, like a 1080 or something, you might get a little better performance out of it. But the setting does make a pretty good difference working in combination with the in-game setting. Other than that, you're gonna just want to match the other settings that I have. Okay, so the 16x is something you can try on and off. Default setting being use the global application control setting. Next, you're gonna want to change CUDA GPUs to whatever your GPU is. You want to click the drop down, and then you want to go in there, use these GPUs, and make sure that you actually select your GPU. Next, you're gonna move down to power management mode, and you're gonna pick prefer maximum performance. Next, you want to turn texture filtering for anisotropic off. You want to turn texture filtering negative LOD bias to clamp. You want to turn texture filtering quality to high quality. You want to change texture filtering trilinear optimization to off. And that'll conclude the Nvidia section of the game. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the game itself. I'm going to show you the settings that you want to use in there. You can start by making sure you got your 2560 by 1440 resolution. That's what this part of the tutorial for. You can also use this for 1080p. Alright, this is the very highest graphic fidelity settings that I could get out of the game. Alright, so we're gonna move on to that part. In the graphics, you want to set it to match this, which would be, as far as VSync is concerned, if you want the fullest graphic fidelity possible, I recommend you try turning off G-Sync in the Nvidia control panel and just set in VSync mode to auto. I noticed that it does look more vivid in color, and in comparison to G-Sync, it could possibly even be better. So you might want to test that out. That's another optional, like the 16x option, working in combination with the 16x within the graphic settings. Frame limit is, I think, is broken. Make sure that you always turn that off. Shadow quality, you want NVIDIA HFTS. Shadow resolution, you want high. Spot shadow, high. Spot shadow resolution, ultra. Contact shadows all high. Post FXAA, SMAA 1X Ultra, temporal AA super sampling resolution 100%. Sharpen image 100% is what I use, but that's really up to your eye. You can use 95% or 90% if you like a softer tone, and then work your way up to see what you like the best. Particle detail ultra, enable wind affected snow, yes. Volumetric fog ultra, reflection quality high, local reflection quality very high. Surface scattering, yes. Anisotropic filtering 16x, and this is the setting that'll work in combination with the 16x in the Nvidia control panel. And that's why I say if your PC can handle it, then you'll probably be good. Alright, so you might want to get that a try in combination, but you'll leave that at 16x regardless. Parallax mapping high, ambient occlusion Nvidia HBAO plus, depth of field off, object detail 100%, extreme streaming distance 100%, the chromatic aberration no. Really poor setting, you can turn that off. Neutral lighting, you can turn that on or off. It really depends on your eye. I prefer off. Lens flare, that's another one that depends on your eye kinda, but I really don't like the lens flare. I don't like the light effect that come off of the scene from it. I kind of like to keep it clear and clean, and that's why I also don't like vintage effect. It kind of just darken the screen some, so I also turn that off. Okay, so using these settings are the highest graphic fidelity settings that I could find for the division. Um, and the next part will be for the mid-range builds. Alright, so if you want to start here with your mid-range or what you think may be a high-end, see how your computer perform. You should average 49 to 51 frames in the benchmark. Alright, so run the benchmark and see how you score, and if you need to lower your settings, move on to the second part of the tutorial, and that should help you out. Alright, so that's coming up next. Okay, and so now with the second part of this tutorial, we're going to move on to the mid-range build settings and the Nvidia control panel first. Alright, you're going to want to set it to like I got it here. You're going to want to just move down the CUDA GPUs and make sure that you select the GPU you're using. Then you're going to want to make sure you set power management mode to prefer maximum performance. You're going to also want to set anisotropic sampling to off, texture filtering negative LOD base to allow. To clamp. um, Texture filtering, trilinear optimization, you want to leave that on. Alright, and then you're going to hit apply, and then we'll move on to the game part of the settings. Alright, what you're going to want to do next is move to your video. Make sure you got everything set. Full screen, 1920 by 1080. 60 hertz if you're using a 60 hertz monitor. That's really what I got in my intention is with this particular part of the tutorial. Now in the graphic settings, to keep as much graphic fidelity as possible and still get good frame rates on a mid-range computer, you want to set VSync mode to auto, and again if you got G-Sync you want to turn G-Sync off and VSync mode to auto, and if you're using a monitor without G-Sync you definitely just want to set VSync mode to auto. Alright, you don't want to use frame limit, set that to off. Shadow quality high, shadow resolution medium, spot shadow count medium, spot shadow resolution high, contact shadow sun low, Post FXAA, SMAA 1X Ultra, Temporal AA, Super Sampling, Resolution Scale 100%, Sharpen Image 100%, but again, that's up to the user. You can go 90%, 95%, and then work off your eye. Particle Detail high, Enable Wind, Affected Snow, yes. Volumetric Fog high, Reflection Quality high, Local Reflection Quality high, Subsurface Scattering, yes. Anisotropic filtering 16x, parallax mapping high, ambient occlusion ultra, depth of field off, object detail 80%, extreme streaming distance 80%, the chromatic arbitration no, but again neutral lighting and lens flare are optional. I set mine to no. One add a lighting effect, one is just personal preference. Like as they say, if you're playing in the dark. Vintage effect set to no, which is just a darkened image of the screen, and I don't like that, so I set that to no. That's also optional. Alright, so with these settings on a mid-range PC, you should get way better performance. If you're on a high-end PC and you're looking for higher frame rates without too much of a sacrifice in graphic fidelity, this should help you out. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the third part of the tutorial, which will be for that computer you know you shouldn't be playing on. Alright, so that's what's up next. Okay, and now last but not least, the third part of this tutorial for computers that you know you shouldn't be playing the game on, but we're going to try to make it work anyway. So what you're gonna want to do first is open your Nvidia control panel. You're gonna want to set your CUDA GPU to whatever graphics card show up in your list. If one does, if one does not, just leave it at the default. It's no problem. Move on to the power management mode. Set it to prefer maximum performance. Texture filtering and anisotropic sampling, you want to set that to on. Texture filtering with negative LOD bias, you want to set that to allow. Texturing filtering quality, you want to set that to high performance. Texture filtering trilinear optimization, you want to set that to on. Triple buffering, you want to set to on. Vertical sync, you want to set to fast. Okay, if you don't get the fast option, just leave it at the global setting. If you don't get it, but you should get the fast option. Alright, you want to apply that, and this would be the Nvidia control panel settings for the low-end computers. So now we switch off to the in-game settings, which again the intention is to try to maintain at least a decent graphic fidelity while still being able to run it on pretty much any computer. You should be able to pull this off. Okay, and I'm gonna show you a couple more little tips and tricks afterwards for if it don't work out for you after you get done using these settings. Alright, so I recommend a resolution of 1280 by 720. Your refresh rate can be 60. It don't really matter because we're gonna set a limit this time. Now graphics, we gonna do VSync mode, set to auto. Frame rate limit, if your computer really need it, like if this really is a really low spec computer, set your frame limit cap to 30 frames per second. Alright, but you don't have to do that right away. At first, just leave it on off until after we finish with these settings. Then run a benchmark, see how you like it, and then, you know, try it with the frame rate limit as well. Alright, so shadow quality, you want to set to low. Shadow resolution low. Spot shadow count low. Spot shadow resolution low. Contact shadow sun low. Post FX AA, you want to set that to 1x high. Okay. Temporal AA, you leave it on super sampling. Resolution scale, you leave it at 100%. Sharpen image, you leave it at 100, or you can cut it down to 90. It's up to you. Particle detail low. Enable wind affected snow, yes. Volumetric fog, medium. Reflection quality low. Local reflection quality off. Subsurface scattering, yes. Anisotropic filtering 16x. Parallax mapping low. Ambient occlusion low. Depth of field off. Object detail 8%. Alright, extreme distance, streaming distance 10%. And you know, the chromatic, neutral, lens flare, and vignette off. All no. Alright, and this will be the settings for the low end PCs. Now, you still can cut down a couple things. Alright, if it still ain't running well for you, if it's that bad, I don't know how bad this go. Alright, so if it is, you can cut the SMAA down to low. To medium, but you don't want to go further than medium. Medium is the lowest you want to go. Alright. So you can cut that down once. You can cut temporal down once to stabilization. Alright, this is a little deeper for the people that's still struggling to run it. And then you can cut resolution scale. No, don't cut resolution scale. Take that back. Leave resolution scale alone because it's going to always match what you got. So if you set these settings and you can run it, the first thing you want to try is turning up your resolution to see if you can go a little higher if you got a monitor with a higher resolution than 720p. If you don't have a monitor with a higher resolution than the 720p, then you can start turning some of these other settings up and seeing if you can get a little, still keep the performance and go a little further. Yeah, and that's pretty. You can cut down the anisotropic filtering as well to 8x if you really need to. Alright, you know, like you can turn off subsurface scattering. Basically, you can shut everything down all the way to off if you need to, based off the computer still not being able to run after this. Alright, and then in this last couple seconds, I'm going to show you one more quick trick for even if you got everything turned off and it still don't work. One more thing that you can try, even if you got it with these settings that I showed you the first time and it ain't performing right, you can still try this little trick to see if it give you a little boost. I know it's like a 2 to 3 frame increase, so I'll show you that and then that'll wrap it up. So I hope this helps you out. And incoming, closing, and a final tip for the low end PCs. Okay, so now if after you try the last settings for the low end PCs, if it's still struggling, you still can't quite get it to run, what you're gonna want to do is go to C, your documents, the division, and you're gonna want to open up a file called graphic settings.cfg with the notepad. And in order to do this, you need to open that file with the notepad in administrative mode. So open the notepad with administrator, click file, open, scroll to my, the documents, my games, the division, and then you can find the graphic settings.cfg. Alright, and you want to open up the CFG and you'll get this. And what you want to do is where it say bloom, you want to change bloom to false, from true to false, and you want to change bloom dirt from true to false, as I've done here. And then you just want to click file, save, and then try running it again, and it should give you a couple more frames. And yeah, so I hope that make the difference in it. And that concludes the tutorial for the high end, mid, and that computer you shouldn't be playing on tutorial. So I hope this helped you guys out in getting your games running. And if it doesn't, feel free to stop into the stream and let me know exactly what you're trying to run it on, and I could be a little more detailed. If the video was helpful, drop a like or subscribe, and I'll catch you all on the next one.